Hi, I'm Heather Marie Montilla, and you are watching PBS Books. Tonight's event highlights Muhammad Ali on the 5-year anniversary of his passing. We are thrilled to welcome all of you as we partner with the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, ASALH, which was founded by Carter G. Woodson in 1915. Having launched our partnership during Black History Month this year, we are thrilled to continue the collaboration to ensure that important voices are heard. Tonight's event is also offered in partnership with the Keiga Foundation, which is dedicated to uplift and support the voices of diverse global communities by providing international communication platforms designed to improve the world through 4 high-impact programming areas: dance and choreography training, global artistic cultural exchange, literacy, and social justice. These collaborations mean a great deal to PBS Books. In addition, we would like to thank our library network partners, numerous PBS stations across the country, and most importantly, we'd like to thank you for joining us. Last month, it was announced that a new Ken Burns documentary film entitled Muhammad Ali will premiere between September 19th and the 22nd on PBS as a 4-part, 8-hour series exploring the life of the legendary boxer, discussing sports, race, and culture. The film follows the life of one of the most consequential men of the 20th century, a 3-time heavyweight boxing champion. At the height of his fame, Ali challenged Americans' racial prejudices, religious biases, and notions about the roles celebrities and athletes play in our society, and inspired people all over the world with his message of pride and self-affirmation. Let's take a moment to watch a clip.
He was bigger than boxing.
I am the greatest.
He was larger than life.
His magnetism just was amazing. Who is this guy?
He was a revolutionary. He was a groundbreaker.
Well, ain't nobody gonna stop me.
Ken Burns captures an intimate story of victory, defeat, and determination.
The price of freedom comes high. I have paid, but I am free.
Muhammad Ali. Tune in or stream. Starts Sunday, September 19th at 8/7 Central, only on PBS.
This evening, we are fortunate to have Ken Burns collaborator, filmmaker David McMahon with us.
Thank you, Heather.
David, just a little bit about you, because you are quite accomplished. David McMahon has been making award-winning documentary films for more than a decade. In addition to writing and co-directing Muhammad Ali with Sarah Burns, David has collaborated with Ken Burns and members of the Florentine film team on the 10th Inning, Central Park 5, Jackie Robinson, and East Lake Meadows, a public housing story. We're so thrilled to have you here this evening to celebrate the life and legacy of Muhammad Ali. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
So can you share with us what inspired you to work on this film, and how long did it take?
Sure. A friend of ours, a journalist, was writing a biography, a comprehensive biography of Muhammad Ali. He reached out to us as far back as, I think, 2013 and suggested that we take this on as a documentary. And we poked around and discovered that while there were many terrific films done about chapters in his life or fights, individual fights, that there really wasn't anything that was comprehensive. And so around 2015, we sort of took it on in earnest. We actually began filming only a week after he had passed. And at the time, we thought that maybe the folks that we had lined up for interviews might not want to join us while they were grieving, but they did, and they were excited to reminisce and to share their recollections about him. So we're putting the finishing touches on it now. And so it'll be really about 5 years in the making.
Wow, that's incredible. You know, as you researched for this film, what surprised you the most about Muhammad Ali?
Well, interestingly, as I began telling people that this is what we were up to, I would say, oh, we're working on this comprehensive documentary about Muhammad Ali. And then they would stop me and go, oh my goodness, I have this incredible story. When I was 7 years old, he came to my town and I met him, and he signed an autograph for me, and I have a snapshot, and hold on, let me get it. And it was, on their bookshelf or somewhere nearby. And it was clear in every case that he left this indelible mark on everybody he encountered, and everybody's enthusiasm for him was palpable. And this just happened over and over with everybody we talked about regarding the film. And so I sort of carried that with me throughout the production, that his big-heartedness and his generosity and the massive life that he lived, it was sort of reflected back on us by everybody he had encountered. And it seemed like he had encountered everybody. I mean, literally billions of people saw him fight, but he never shied away from a camera. He never shied away from an encounter with a fan. He seemed to understand that it would be a moment they would speak about for the rest of their lives. And he loved the attention, and he had such a big heart that his impact, he left that all over everybody who he ever encountered, even if it was only briefly.
Well, thank you for that reflection. As you prepare for the film to premiere, what part of the film are you most excited for us to see?
Well, it's such a big life, and there's so much to be excited about. I know people are familiar with chapters, they're familiar with particular fights, but I'm excited that everyone gets to see the whole span of his life and all the facets of it. They can go on a spiritual journey with him. They can understand his close association with the Nation of Islam and Malcolm X. They can understand the sacrifice he made in refusing induction into the army, what the costs were, how reviled he was for it. And then this long climb back. He was stripped of his title. A white boxing press, a white establishment, the US government did whatever they could to knock him down. And he climbed back. And by the time the Vietnam War was over, and in the mid-70s, when he had been without this title for years, he won it again, and had won everybody over by that point and become, at that time, maybe the most famous man in the world. And I think in doing the comprehensive story, we can put all of that together and give everybody the whole arc of his life, his struggle with Parkinson's, an intimate look at his family and his children. It's all there under one roof, and I hope everybody will tune in for the whole thing. We're very excited to share it.
Well, we are so excited that you are sharing it, and we are happy that you joined us. So thank you so much for your time. We look forward to having more opportunities to speak with you about Ali in the coming months. PBS will actually be hosting national conversations to explore Ali's life prior to the film's release in the coming months, and that would be June 23rd, July 19th, September 9th, and September 4th. The registration link right now will be placed in the chat function, and we look forward to seeing all of you and hoping you all will watch Ken Burns' Muhammad Ali coming on September 19th. Thank you so much for joining us, David. So you are watching PBS Books, and we are here celebrating the life and legacy of Muhammad Ali. Today's conversation highlights esteemed poet and writer Ishmael Reed, he's written many incredible works, but he wrote in 2015, The Complete Muhammad Ali, which explores the American boxer and activist. The book really shares new material that had not previously been public and been published. To guide today's conversation, I'm pleased to have Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Stephen Henderson. Henderson is the host of Detroit Public Television's American Black Journal, a weekly talk show featuring African-American perspectives on topics around arts, culture, and community issues important to the city of Detroit, the state of Michigan, and the nation. Henderson is also the host of WDET's Detroit Today. Thank you, Stephen, for joining us.
Thank you for having me. And it's really wonderful to be here to talk not only about Muhammad Ali, but about Ishmael Reed's wonderful work about Muhammad Ali. I want to make sure that before we get started, we talk a little about how this is going to work. I'm going to ask Ishmael Reed some questions. We're going to have a really interesting conversation about his book and about some of his other work. And then we're going to turn it over to you, the viewers. We're going to take questions from the audience. And so if you have questions, if you have things that you want to sort of bring up in the course of this conversation. All you have to do is put them in the chat window here, and we will pick them out in a little bit. But let's first get to Ishmael Reed, who is a poet, a novelist, an essayist, a playwright, a songwriter, a lecturer, and a publisher. That is quite a list of achievements and jobs. He has won numerous prizes and grants in each of those categories, and he's also an illustrator and a jazz pianist. In 2019, he began his 36th year as a professor at the University of California at Berkeley. He also teaches at the California College of the Arts, where he is a distinguished professor. His most recent books, which were published by Baraka Books, are Why No Confederate Statues in Mexico, that in 2019, and The Terrible Fours, which was just published this year in 2021. He also is the author of the forthcoming Bigotry on Broadway, and he lives in Oakland. Ishmael Reed, welcome to PBS Books.
Oh, thank you very much, Stephen.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. So I want to start with just an overview of this wonderful work that you published in 2015, The Complete Muhammad Ali. It's a story about Ali that takes a very different arc, I think, than most of the things that I've read or seen about him. It is a very deliberate arc. Let's start with you talking about why you wanted to tell this story and why you chose to tell it this way.
Well, Stephen, I think that in this country, the Black story is told by others. And so Black opinion and the Black narrative is under a sort of like cultural occupation. And so I had to go to Montreal to get this book published. And it was supposed to be published in the United States, but that's another story. I thought that what I call the Ali Scribes, I think mostly privileged white men who control the story about Ali, had left out important information. For example, the great influence that the Nation of Islam played upon his thinking. So, for example, I think that what Muhammad Ali did was to follow the teachings of Elijah Muhammad, and sort of like I don't want to use the term like parroted or like sort of like repeated the pronouncements of Elijah Muhammad. This part of his story is left out, and I think that the Nation of Islam is dismissed by what I call the Ali Scribes, the people who have a monopoly over that his story, because they considered the Nation of Islam to be hate mongers.
And let's talk about that relationship. I think when you talk about Elijah Muhammad, you talk about the Nation of Islam. In popular American culture, the name that comes most to mind, of course, is Malcolm X, who is the most recognizable figure, I think, in the Nation of Islam. And I think people know a little more about the relationship he had with Elijah Muhammad than the one that Ali had. But catch us up on what that relationship was like, what it meant to Muhammad Ali, both in positive terms and sometimes in negative ones.
Well, Marvin X, who's a Black nationalist who actually knew both Ali and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, talks about an incident where he went to Chicago to interview Muhammad Ali, and after conferring with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Ali canceled the interview. So I think that what shows the influence that Elijah Muhammad had over Ali happened when he broke with Malcolm X. Malcolm X became an international figure and sort of like a television star. And a friend of mine, one of the people I interviewed named Joe Walker, he and I ran a newspaper in Buffalo, New York, said that when he worked for Muhammad Speaks, Malcolm X hired him. The people in Chicago felt that he was favoring Malcolm X over Elijah Muhammad. So Muhammad Ali was caught in that feud, and what he did, he chose to follow Elijah Muhammad. As a matter of fact, he mocked Malcolm X when they encountered each other in Africa.
And so relate that relationship, I guess, with Elijah Muhammad and with the Nation of Islam to the activism that we know defines so much of Ali's career. Of course, it's his personality and his strong independence and almost defiance that drives much of that. But his allegiance to the Nation of Islam also helps frame some of that activism.
Well, not participating in the war was policy. He was not the only follower of the Nation of Islam who took that position. As a matter of fact, Abdul Rahman, whom I interviewed, was the one who told him to tell the press, no Vietnamese ever called me the N-word. I mean, Muhammad Ali was attracted to the Nation of Islam when he saw Abdul Rahman and others selling the newspaper in Florida. And there's a scene where the women are cooking for the people in the who had gathered there. The press is outside, and Abdul Rahman told me that he told Muhammad Ali not to yield to the press demands that he take a position, and tell them that no Vietnamese ever called him that. Now, he was instructed, or he was using the precedent set by Elijah Muhammad, who also avoided the war, World War II. They tried to get him for sedition first, then they got him for draft dodging, and he went to prison for 5 years. So he was following that precedent. Matter of fact, the great historian Gerald Horne says there were more pro-Japanese fronts among Black people in the United States than communist fronts, and that George Schuyler and many others, Du Bois and others, celebrated the Japanese victory over the Russian Navy.
I want to talk about the voices that you incorporate in this book, which are different from a lot of the voices that we've heard before talk about Muhammad Ali. Talk about the process of gathering those voices and how it helps you render the story in a really different way.
Well, I went to, I was approached by Shea Earhart, the great editor who was Jacqueline Kennedy's editor, who asked me to write this book. And she was fired from Crown, and the manuscript was just laying around somewhere. They sent two editors to sort of like co-edit the book or whatever, and they disappeared from the scene. So the rights reverted to me. And I approached Robin Philpott. I had published Robin Philpott, who had run for parliament in Montreal. And so I approached him for publishing this book, and he published it right away. So I began the book in 2003, and I think it was published in 2015 or something like that. So it was a long process, but I was able to interview people who were left out, voices that are left out. I got in a lot of trouble for writing a play called The Haunting of Lin-Manuel Miranda. That's what we do. We point to parts of history that are left out of American history. Look at Tulsa, what happened there, where we uncovered, an atrocity or genocide that occurred in 1921. So we do the left out stuff, and that led me to interviewing people whose voices were not heard. For example, I went to a Black nationalist book fair that was organized by Marvin X in San Francisco, interviewed Amiri Baraka and a number of other people whose stories about Ali are not told.
Talk about the personal Ali, the big personality that he had. You get into who he is in this book as a person in a way also that I haven't seen in other places.
Well, Muhammad Ali never faced the physical danger that Joe Louis, Sugar Ray Robinson, Henry Armstrong, and Sonny Liston faced. I mean, these people are dismissed as Uncle Toms. Jackie Robinson, who was court martial for striking an officer. Sugar Ray Robinson and Joe Louis beat up the MP, military police in a bus station, in a segregated bus station, because the police jabbed his nightstick into Joe Louis's side, and next thing you know, they were down. And it was a big fight, and it ended when somebody said, "Hey, that's Joe Louis." So Henry Armstrong beat up two policemen. Sonny Liston, a policeman called him a B.A. N-word, and Sonny Liston put him in a trash can. After that, there was a vendetta against Sonny Liston all over the United States, wherever he went, Denver, Philadelphia, all over. The police, there was a grapevine the police had. The only place where he was safe was Las Vegas because the police don't run Las Vegas. Las Vegas. So these people are dismissed as Uncle Toms when Muhammad Ali never faced a kind of physical danger where you have actual physical combat with armed white men with authority that they faced.
When you are putting together a book like this and thinking about it in terms that are really different from others, you're not only thinking, I think, of words, but also of images. And there are lots of images in this book, and some of them are images that people haven't seen before. Talk about those images.
Well, there was one of the best photographers who followed Muhammad Ali's career was Jose Puentes, Puerto Rican photographer, and his widow, the late Jose Puentes, his widow allowed me to use these photographs, which were never published before. So you look at that cover, most of the photos I've seen have shown a sort of like playful, mischievous, showman, Ali. This picture shows gloom because it was the day of the fight with Leon Spinks, the second fight. And when I went to his suite where his aides were gathered, I could feel the gloom that they thought that this would be his last fight, or he might be defeated. It might have been a good thing had he been defeated because he went on and fought Larry Holmes. According to Angelo Dundee, Ali fought those last two fights with brain damage. The fight with Larry Holmes, which was a devastating punishment, a cruel punishment. And then he fought Trevor Berbick. And one of the trainers told me that one of the Tommy Hearns was supposed to appear on Good Morning America to go a few rounds with Ali, and Ali was so pitiful and was such bad shape that he called it off. So that's the part that the Ali Scribes is not going to talk about. Talk about his, refusing to enter the war in Vietnam without giving the Nation of Islam credit for that policy. But they won't talk about the sad and tragic end of Ali's career.
Yeah. I wonder if there's a passage that you'd like to read for people from the complete Muhammad Ali.
Okay. Well, I'm going to surprise you.
Okay.
Because as I wrote this book, I began to really sympathize with Sonny Liston and feel that he'd gotten a raw deal. And, when President Obama and others showed that photo of Liston down on the canvas and Ali standing over him, I thought that was a clash between the middle class and the underclass. Because, everything I heard in Louisville was that Ali and his brother, Rahman, grew up under very, comfortable circumstances.
Yeah.
Suddenly, this was just sort of thrown into the world. He had to survive with all his children, his siblings. His father beat him every day. And when he went to live with his mother, she wanted to know why he showed up. So he was not wanted. And so I just want to read a passage here. After the fight with Ali, Liston was never again given the opportunity to fight for the championship, but continued to bust up some contenders. His reputation was destroyed by sports writers and commentators who, then as now, believe that they know more about boxing than the fighters. This includes those who broadcast Floyd Mayweather's second fight. I would say that Floyd Mayweather is pound per pound the best fighter in history. Second fight with Marcos Maidana. They said that Mayweather had been helped in his defeat of Maidana with the aid of the referee. They also disputed Mayweather's claim that he'd been bitten by Maidana. How, they asked, could he have been bitten when he was wearing gloves? Paulie Malignaggi had to explain to them that he had been bitten by a boxer while wearing gloves and it hurt. Similarly, while sports writers who have never entered the ring, like jazz critics who fake it, accused Liston of being in on the fix after that second fight where he went down with the so-called phantom punch. Three champions, Rocky Marciano, Jose Torres, and James Braddock, the Cinderella Man, said it was a legitimate punch that knocked Liston down. They say that for the aging champion, and Liston might have been 40 when he fought Ali, power is the last asset to go. So it was with Liston. His last fight was with Chuck Wepner. Now, this was 3 months before he was murdered, whose knockdown of Ali was the basis of the Rocky films. Liston beat him so badly that Wepner said, was to say that every time he hit me in the face, he broke something. Liston received $13,000 for that fight. He was supposed to have received $15,000. So was Liston an animal? Liston had a dry wit and a shrewd intelligence. He loved children, and there's an account that the mob frightened Liston, frightened Liston by threatening to kidnap one of his children if he didn't take a dive. He gave money to charity and was known to do good works. Most of those who knew him vouched for his good character and his intelligence. A few mentioned his witty replies to Ali's verbal jabs. In the 100 or so worshipful books about Muhammad Ali, they feature his clever goading of Liston, which got Liston so angry that he fought a clumsy fight with Ali. And I'll conclude with another paragraph. At any rate, this is after Liston died. At any rate, thousands left their gambling tables and scoreboards to witness the Liston funeral procession pass through the Las Vegas Strip. Among the celebrities were Ed Sullivan, Doris Day, Ella Fitzgerald, Jackie Leonard, Jerry Vale, and Rosie Greer. Many were in tears because deep down they probably knew that Sonny Liston, born into poverty and without schooling, called by Joe Louis the greatest heavyweight champion, had been dealt a bad hand. He said that he was treated like a sewer rat. But while Ali was hailed as a hero for the middle class to stand against an unpopular war, Liston represented the underclass that President Obama and the Harvard Circle disdained. He was one of 24 children and was born in a condition of slavery without the name. His father beat him. He traveled to St. Louis to be with his mother, who instead of giving him an affectionate greeting, wanted to know why he showed up. Having no education, he, like other members of his class, committed petty, high-risk crimes. An armed robbery landed him in prison. He got into trouble with the law and sports writers like Larry Merchant after he defended himself against a drunken armed cop who lied about the incident, as some cops regularly do. His wife, Geraldine, was correct when she called him the champ that nobody wanted.
So as much as this book is about Muhammad Ali and his journey, it's about America, and it's about Black America, and it's about Black America's place and relationship with white America. What lessons do you think we should be drawing from this story right now, as we're having really intense conversations about some of the very same dynamics that surrounded Muhammad Ali when he was young, when he was an activist, when he was a fighter. What should we be learning from this?
Well, it was consensus among the those black people that I interviewed that America began to love him when he was ill and near death, and his health was deteriorating. That's when all this affection started pouring out. And you have to give credit to his wife, Yolanda, who was a shrewd businesswoman. And according to what I heard in Louisville and read, he was near death after that Larry Holmes fight. He was broke, and she had a crush on him ever since she was a child. And when she married him, she got his affairs in order. She brought about a $50 million deal for him, use of his name. I mean, once in a while you'll see Ali in these commercials. Now, that's because of her shrewd business sense. So I think Yolanda is the one who had him live his life, the rest of his life in comfort and at peace. But I think that the black people I interviewed are very skeptical of this outpouring of affection. They feel that he was no longer the Louisville Lip. He was feeble, and that's when they loved him. They love you when you're down and out and when you're dead.
So beyond being an accomplished novelist, I know you're also a poet, an essayist, a lecturer, and a songwriter. So I always wonder with writers how the other things they do inform the work. How does being a poet, for instance, or a songwriter help you or shape the way you write a novel or write a book, a biography of someone like Muhammad Ali?
Well, I was traveling with a band called Conjure, and you can get their records on Amazon, Conjure 1, Conjure 2, Conjure 3, who set my work to music. For example, Alan Toussaint and Carla Bley and a number, Taj Mahal. I've written songs for Cassandra Wilson. Macy Gray did my song last. So all these things are related. And I took up some playwriting. I've written about 9 plays. And my new play is called The Slave Who Loved Caviar. You can see a reading. You can see a reading of it on YouTube. Just go to The Slave Who Loved Caviar, in which I play Dracula's son. And the play is about the exploitation of Jean-Michel Basquiat, who died at 28 and who was destroyed by the downtown art crowd, racist downtown art crowd. And in December, that play is opening at the Theater for the New City off Broadway in December. It'll be running there for a month. But right now you can see a reading of the play at YouTube. And I play piano. The great fashion designer, Grace Wales Bonner, flew me to London, and I played the piano to back up her fashion show. And Naomi Campbell took an Instagram of my playing the piano in the fashion show, and I said, I could die now. But anyway, I have a lot of fun writing. I love it.
So you are with PBS Books, and we're here with Ishmael Reed discussing the complete Muhammad Ali and his other work. Just a reminder that if you want to participate in this conversation, you can enter any questions you have or any comments you have in the chat, and we are reviewing those questions and we'll answer them toward the end of the program. I wonder, Ishmael, if you can talk about the last year, which has been, I think, unlike any other year that any of us alive have experienced. It has been especially hard, I think, on artists and writers. It affects, I think, the creative process in a really different way. It's also been really brutal on the African-American community. Talk about what has changed in your life in the last year, and what has it inspired you to be working on?
Well, I think that I wrote a book called Why No Confederate Flags, Why No Confederate Statues, Why No Confederate Statues in Mexico. And I talk about the criminal and genocidal behavior of these people that we feel build statues to, Stonewall Jackson, Jefferson Davis, and all of them. You know, they killed thousands of people before they got us into a war that cost 600,000 American lives. Matter of fact, Ken Burns, whom you mentioned earlier, said that these guys cost more lives in war than so-called Tojo, the Japanese. So I did a little research and went back to the origins of their homicidal fanaticism and found that they killed thousands of Native Americans. And then they went into Mexico and killed, thousands of unarmed people, that same crew, all these Confederate generals. And I talk about one battle where they sought to overcome a citadel where some Mexican cadets were holding forth. And Robert E. Lee was an engineer. As a matter of fact, his generals say he blundered the war, lost the war, because actually he was an engineer more than a general. He's more of an engineer. He designed the bombardment of this castle. And so when they conquered the Mexican army that was holding the castle, six cadets from 16 to from 12 or 6 to 16 refused to surrender. And they're called Los Ninos in Mexico, and there's statues to them. And one of them hurled himself from the wall of the castle, embracing the Mexican flag. These are heroes in Mexico. One more thing. There was an army, a battalion, St. Patrick's Battalion, and it was made of fugitive slaves, immigrants, Irish Americans, and others. And the measures that were taken, the war measures taken against the Mexicans, were so vicious and evil that they defected to the other side, and they were hanged. So these are stories that we don't get. Now, as for this year, I think they want to take us back to the 1860s when white supremacy reigned. And I think their model is probably these generals like Robert E. Lee and Jefferson Davis and others. And I think McClellan, the senator, the minority leader in the Senate, is sort of like doing more for the Confederacy than all these generals put together. He's practiced nullification against Barack Obama. Now he's doing it again. Now, this is not the party of Trump. This is the party of John Wilkes Booth. Because John Wilkes Booth was in the audience when Lincoln said he wanted black people to vote. And he was overheard saying, I'm going to kill him now. So this is the party of John Wilkes Booth. They want to take away the franchise from black people. And they believe assassination, like Booth, they believe assassination is the way to do it. Like they went in there and threatened to hang the vice president. They want to hang. They had a scaffold outside. So in the end, they can't win because white nationalism is dead. This will never be a white country, never has been, and will never be. So they're going to lose, but a lot of people are going to die in the process.
So back to Ali, do you see anyone now who kind of embodies the spirit and the legacy of the kind of activism that Muhammad Ali embraced and practiced in his life? Who would that be?
I think LeBron James has gone beyond him. I think some of the basketball players have done much more with philanthropy. I mean, Ali was good at giving individuals gifts, like when he was in Manila, and I got that point of view. I interviewed Emil Guillermo, who said the thriller in Manila brought the Philippines into the 20th century. Before that, they were regarded as the little brown ones. But that fight gave the Philippines international recognition. But I think that that fight and some of the other incidents of generosity, where he gave some guy in the Philippines, a mother and a mother and her child went to headquarters, and I think Ali gave them $25,000 because they said they needed money. So he was into individual philanthropy, but LeBron and Stephen Curry and some of the other basketball players have created organizations, And I wrote a book about Black philanthropy. Not a book, excuse me, an article. I write, some guy called me the Lord of writing too much. But I wrote an article about Black philanthropy, and Blacks do give. They give more than other ethnic groups, and I think this is increasing. So I think the athletes are showing the way in terms of philanthropy.
Yeah. So what's next? What's next for you? You have such a busy mind, such an active mind. Where is it headed now?
Well, I think that I'm going to go out on my shield. I got that. People attribute this phrase to me, writing is fighting. I got that from Ali. I keep telling these people, I said, that's not anything original with me. When Charlie Harris and others got Ali to sign a contract, or Richard Durham wrote one of the best books, the greatest, on Ali. They asked him how he was going to write a book, and he said, writing is fighting. And that's been one of the few weapons, one of the few weapons available to us. The way we can look back, and a number of our poets, like Paul Laurence Dunbar, had a newspaper, the Dayton Tatler, which interesting enough was supported by the Wright brothers, his newspaper. George Schuyler, Langston Hughes, some of our great writers, John A. Williams, who wrote for Newsweek, have been journalists.
Yeah. Okay, now I'd like to invite Heather from PBS Books to join us for the question and answer segment of this conversation. Heather?
Thank you, Stephen. This has been a great conversation, and I'm looking forward for us to continue it. So we're going to start the Q&A. Our first question actually comes from someone who is live, who is with us. And she is a writer and a poet, Tennessee Reed, Ishmael Reed's daughter. Before you share your question with us, Tennessee, I was hoping you could share a little bit about yourself, about your creative process and your recent work.
I recently had a book published entitled Calafia Burning. I worked on that book for about 8 years. My creative process is very different than most people's. Whatever comes to my mind, I just write about it. First, it becomes into journal format, and then eventually becomes a poem. Actually, I write a lot about animals and nature. That's one of my big subjects. Also politics and travel and other things that come to my mind. My master's thesis was actually about animals. And right now, since that book has been published, I've been working on a poetry journal about my low back problems, starting from the diagnosis up to the recent spinal fusion surgery that I had, and into the recovery period. So I'm currently working on that.
Well, one of the reasons I was so thrilled that you could join us is I think creatives, and especially you, Tennessee, who obviously you've had an intimate relationship with your father, would be able to ask some really tough questions. And we were hoping that you could start us off with the Q&A by asking one of those tough questions that, would provide more insight for all of us.
Okay. Mr. Reed, when did you first notice Muhammad Ali?
Yes, well, I went to a poetry reading at a place called the Bitter Inn. It was a cafe in Greenwich Village, and he read with a poet named Diane Wachowski, who's a very famous poet. And I saw him, driving up with his entourage, and he's very curious. He looked around, looked at the crowd, and looked the place up and down. And I understand he acquitted himself very well as a poet. And then I went to see him fight Doug Jones. Doug Jones won that fight. And it occurred to me that this was how television was going to work. Television was going to seek the most glamorous and outspoken, attention-getting boxers to promote. And that's come down to us to the present day, where Golden Boy and the other promoters choose, fighters who are telegenic and who are bring in crowds. So I think that's the way he struck me. But I mean, he fought a lot of great fights. He was very fast, But when he lost his speed, he started to get hit. Ron Lyle said that you could hit him. Before that draft thing where he was off for a few years, you couldn't touch him. Look at some of the fights. He had the speed. But when he slowed down, they began to hit him, just like Roy Jones. When Roy Jones slowed down, he got hit. And then I saw him in 1978, where I covered the fight for the Village Voice, and he was on the decline, very much on the decline then.
Tennessee, do you have another question as well?
Did you ever meet him?
Yeah, I met him in 1978 when I covered the fight for the Village Voice. I was walking, I opened the door and he was standing there. It was a real surprise. He was standing there with his third wife and Veronica. And I found myself saying, the greatest man in the world. I mean, I interviewed the South African singer before he died, Hugh Masekela, and he said we were unreasonable about Ali, and he's right about that. He was a figure of awe to us. I mean, they let him beat up Superman in the comic books. So he was that awe-inspiring, a huge fellow with, he said, good looks. Of course, he denied his so-called white blood, but then toward the end of his life, he went to Ireland and met, his great-great-grandfather, Abraham Grady. He met his relatives over there, and thousands of people turned out to see him. It wasn't covered by the American press. I think I found it in the Irish news. But he began to become more universal, I guess you might say that, where Buddhists were saying his name. And I think toward the end of his life, he became what he accused Malcolm of becoming, a holy man.
Okay, we're going to go to some audience questions now. Edwin asks, how did Ali's 6 core principles come to be? Where did that come from?
Well, I think I don't want to bring Freud into this, but his father was a sign painter, and he did paintings of Jesus and the apostles in these churches. So when he revolted against Christianity, it might have been some kind of Freudian thing, I don't know, but his father really sort of like supported the family, and they were comfortable. But he began to question things that we question, like why was Santa Claus white? Why was Jesus white? Why are all these icons white? We didn't see anything black. When I went to school, I took a book, when I was going to grammar school, I took a book by J.A. Rogers, 100 Facts About the Negro, and the teacher dismissed it, said it was nonsense. So we had no history. And one of the things that Malcolm X and others did was to popularize Black history. They didn't invent it. There were others scholars before them, but they popularized it. And so Muhammad Ali had the same questions that we had. And I think for him, the Nation of Islam answered these questions for him. These are very well-read people. Now, Elijah Muhammad had very little education, but he read about 100 books in the Library of Congress. So if you look at the Black Panthers and the Nation, you look at their children, they're very articulate. I heard they did Huey Newton's funeral here. It was like a seminar or something. So many people had their doctorates and stuff. So I think that was a threat that that generation posed to the establishment, because not only would they fight you back, they're very smart. As a matter of fact, in Detroit, and you know, Stephen, that in Detroit, the members of the Nation of Islam used to fight the police in the courthouse for just disrespecting Black women.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We haven't seen people like that before.
Yeah. We've got another audience question. Gordon asks, how would Ali have done against Joe Louis? That's a really interesting. That's a really interesting question. Would he have beat him?
Well, I asked some old timers in the shoe shine shop or shoe repair store about that, and they had a big fight about it. But I think Ali had more weapons than Lewis, and he talked about Lewis fighting like a mummy. You remember the mummy in the movies? Like he called Joe Lewis the mummy. He had nicknames for the boxers, but I think that Ali just had more technique than Lewis. But Lewis, if he caught up with you, he'd knock you out. Like he said, you could run, but you can't hide. That's what I say to these people putting out these bad stories about black people. You can run, but you can't hide. Lewis, Miranda, you can't hide.
Yeah. I also wonder if, given the things that are happening now, given what you see in sports, given the activism you see among sports figures and the conversations that we're having now, are you hopeful about the future? Are you hopeful that that justice and equality will play a bigger role in America sometime soon, or do you think this is maybe just kind of an episodic chapter in a much longer story?
No, I think it's up to ordinary people. This thing on Facebook, I ought to stay away from Facebook. I spend too much time on it. But I was looking at the mother of this policeman who was slain, and when these thugs try to overthrow the government, as a matter of fact, they were white collar people with sick leave and pensions and everything. They weren't like cast aside, which is the media's thing about their being cast aside and forgotten. No, these are CEOs, and one of them arrived on a private plane. But I saw her on television, and I said, when history touches ordinary people, they respond with eloquence. Look at George Floyd's brother, how he's responding. History. So ordinary people will get us through this. People like Fannie Lou Hamer, that kind of person, or Attorney General Mitchell's wife. Remember Martha Mitchell? She said Nixon was wrong. She said Nixon was behind the whole thing. And I remember when they put a wreath on her grave, one of the wreaths said, Martha was right. As long as we have individuals like this, we don't have to worry about these creeps. Matter of fact, I got a poem coming out about these people in the North American Review very shortly, where I express my disdain for these people, comparing what they did to 1776. Everybody they hate fought in that war, in the Revolutionary War. Black people fought in there, so these guys can go around and put nooses in workplaces, black people, calling President Obama a pimp and his wife a prostitute and everything. Black people fought at Valley Forge. They left their bloody footprints in the snow at Valley Forge. They don't like Jews. Those Jewish financiers financed the Revolutionary War. One was arrested by the British. They don't like immigrants. Immigrants fought in the Revolutionary War. These are Fox News patriots. These are sunshine patriots, They go to Washington, get in these 4-star hotels, go show their behinds at the Capitol, then get back to their hotels in time for happy hour.
I also wonder, you spend a lot of your time as a professor with young people. I'm always curious what you hear from young people right now, especially after the year we just had and all the disruption that they've experienced. Are you hopeful about what you're hearing from them about America in the future?
Well, I think they're probably less walled off from other groups than we were. I grew up in segregated the projects, and that was my life. That was our life. And incidentally, so I didn't really realize how segregated my life was until my partner, who helped me, who was a co-author of Bigotry on Broadway, we went back to my hometown because she was writing a book about Mary Bethune, who was the first woman who would be licensed as an architect. And she built the Lafayette Hotel in Buffalo, New York in about the 1900s. And I went into certain neighborhoods and I was like, I was reluctant to get out of the car because the old days, you walk in those neighborhoods, you could be beaten up and called by the N-word and everything. So I think that the younger people have a different perspective than we had because they've been exposed to the social media and have global interactions, which we didn't have. Now the people, the good old boys who dominate the column pages of the New York Times, who sound like QAnon, although they went to Harvard, they got a better vocabulary. They're all upset about wokeness, and they're upset about cancel culture. Nobody's canceling them. So I mean, they do not have the perspective with their narrow Eurocentric educations that these young people have.
Well, we are at the top of the hour and we need to close conversation. But I wanted to just thank Ishmael for your book, for your tremendous insights, for your amazing research, and for sharing it tonight with us, and your creativity. I feel so honored that that you are among us. I want to thank Tennessee because I really enjoyed meeting her and having her questions and having her on the live stream. And then I wanted to thank Stephen for guiding this incredible conversation. It's been such an honor to have you. From PBS Books, we are so appreciative that you joined this evening. And until next time, we thank you.